Welcome to Food Friends, a podcast inspiring home cooks to try new dishes in the kitchen by sharing trusted recipes, tips, and friendship. Hi, I'm Sonia.
And I'm Carrie. We met in Los Angeles over 15 years ago as personal chefs and haven't stopped talking about food since. We're so glad you're here. Thanks for being our food friend.
If you enjoyed our podcast, please subscribe, leave us a review, and share this episode with friends. We love hearing from you, so follow us on Instagram or drop us a line at foodfriendspodcast.com.
Yes, we'd love to hear from you and your food friends. Happy cooking and eating.
Hi, Carrie.
Hi, Sonia.
New Year's is a tricky holiday for me. How about you?
Yeah, I think there's are you getting dressed up and going out and dancing around every hour and celebrating midnight at another place in the world? And then there's also I want to stay home in my pajamas and eat really good food and maybe have a glass of champagne.
There's a third, which is usually, honestly, my preference, small dinner party. When I mean small, 4 to 6 people, something where you really spend some time making something delicious, but not the kind of time you would make for Thanksgiving or like around Christmas. I love that there's all these food rituals for the new year because I'm all about, okay, if there's a reason to eat something for luck or for joy, I'm kind of in.
A theme.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun to have a theme. You're exactly right.
It makes your meal more fun.
Yeah, and I think starting with appetizers and small bites, especially if you are hosting or going to a party. For my client, I a lot of the time have been making bacon wrapped blue cheese stuffed dates, which I feel is like such a retro appetizer, but she just loves them so much. But I've done this with other kinds of non-pork bacon, and I would just call out that you can get lamb bacon, which is delicious. You can get beef.
Who knew?
Yeah, you can get beef versions of bacon. You could obviously get turkey bacon. I think that's the least good for this because it's less fatty, but it still works because it's that smoky flavor you're really after. And yes, while blue cheese is a classic filling, I also like just filling it with almonds, like whole beautiful almonds, or even like a rosemary Marcona almond. And then you have this kind of herby, salty center with the smoky, salty outside and that sweet molassesy date. You can wrap them all up ahead of time and then just pop them in the oven when your guests are there. They take like 15 minutes and it makes the whole house smell nice. I kind of think these classic appetizers really work for this type of holiday.
I'm glad you used that word classic because it's a universally loved appetizer. And I've actually never done them with blue cheese. I like them with Parmesan because it's creamy and nutty, and even just 1 or 2 bacon wrapped dates filled with whatever your favorite filling is. They're rich and they're delicious.
And the only thing I have to say is the only special equipment you need is a toothpick. You do need to have a toothpick to secure that bacon in place. But other than that, to your point, whatever cheese you like to fill it with, or nut or walnut or pecan, is kind of an endlessly versatile, simple app.
Yeah, I mean, I think a Gouda would be nice here, even a super sharp cheddar. You really can go in many different directions. Well, my first appetizer is there's this recipe for cheese ball bites with a pretzel handle. I think most people really love a cheese ball. Again, there's versatility here. This recipe calls for a mix of cream cheese and cheddar, and you can roll it in whatever nuts that you like, but you want to roll them into really small bite-sized pieces, and then you stick one of those pretzel sticks in it so that people can just pick it up and eat it. I mean,
that's cute. I love what you
cute.
often find these really fun presentations of sort of traditional ideas because I love a cheese ball. I love kind of what you're describing, that combination of cheeses. You have to have cream cheese. That's an essential part.
Yeah.
But I love chopped pecans as a coating. And then you can like sort of pick up. It's so festive.
Listen, if you don't want to fuss with all that, of course you can make a big cheese ball. And that's a nice thing to put on a table with a knife and cracker and smear and talk and chat and connect and all those things. But there's something really cute about having an individual.
I have something that's kind of similar, but it has a different ingredient involved. So it's still in the cheese wrapped individual bite-sized ball sort of version. In recent years, I learned that in Spain, they eat grapes for good luck at New Year's. And I just love, like we've already talked about, a food tradition. And so if the Spaniards are eating grapes, why not? That sounds delicious and refreshing. But there's this recipe that I made years ago and I've loved ever since, where you take grapes and you want nice sized, really crisp ones. You don't want soft grapes for this. And you you cover them in goat cheese, softened goat cheese. Like you just take it with your hands and you wrap the grape in it. And then you roll it around in crushed pistachios.
Oh,
And it's
wow.
so this sweet, salty, creamy, savory bite. And it's just another really fun little app that's individual bites that's kind of filling. And it feels perfect for a cocktail party or a New Year's Eve party.
Well, I also have a couple of grape ideas because I learned this as well. One is Sour Patch grapes, where you take grapes, you put a little bit of liquid over them, like a little bit of lemon or a little bit of water, just so that they're a little bit wet. You roll them in powdered jello. So you can use any
Yeah.
flavor of jello, grape jello, orange jello. And they have this kind of Sour Patch because jello packets have citric acid. And so there's like the sweetness of the sugar that's in the jello and then the citric acid. So it's like the sweet and sour together.
Do you eat them right away? I feel like I saw this on TikTok.
You put them in a bowl and you stick them in the fridge. You can also stick them in the freezer until that coating kind of dries out a little bit in the cold air. And then you serve them in a bowl and people can just pop them in their mouths.
That's super fun.
There's also this recipe for Prosecco grapes where you take a bowl of grapes and you marinate them in some Prosecco and a little bit of vodka for like an hour or two. And then you drain that and you roll them in sugar. They're this kind of boozy grape for an adult party that you're having.
I've also seen versions of that where I like that you use the word marinate. I guess I would say soak, but you're right, it is marinating it.
Yeah.
And I've seen people do it like with Sprite or ginger ale. So you soak the fruit or something and then it's the same idea and you roll it in sugar later. But I love a boozy version. That sounds much better for obvious reasons.
It's really fun. It's something that you can pop into your mouth while you're chatting or watching a movie or whatever you're doing on New Year's Eve.
Also for New Year's Eve, also for New Year's, there's a tradition of eating noodles for good luck. And that's true in many places. It's sort of like longevity, like as long as a noodle. And so long noodles are also preferred when we're talking about noodle dishes. I also around New Year's Eve start craving vegetarian dishes. I get a little burnt out from all the richness of the season.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking for things that are a little lighter. There's two noodle dishes I'm eyeing to make around New Year's. One is a mushroom ragu pasta. It's an incredible recipe by Heidi Swanson of 101 Cookbooks. There's many smart tips in this ragu. For one, she adds dry porcini powder to the mushrooms that she's cooking.
Wow.
So that amplifies that mushroom taste. And dried porcini powder, you can also find like dried shiitake powder or dried mushroom powder. I've even found it in places like World Market. You don't always have to go to a specialty food store to find it. You can also sometimes just take dried porcini mushrooms, which you can usually find most grocery stores, and blitz them in a blender or...
That's what I was also just wondering, is that's essentially what it is.
Yeah. And so that dried mushroom powder is going to amplify this so much. And then it's a low and slow cooking process like you would do with any ragu, where it's like first you saute your mushrooms and your aromatics, and then you add the tomato element, and then you let it simmer for 1 to 3 hours, she said. So you have this long simmering sauce, which obviously you could make days in advance, weeks in advance. You could keep in your freezer. And then when you want to serve, you cook off your pasta. I also think it's sometimes fun to make a fresh pasta at a holiday. If you are in the mood to cook, then having a fresh noodle with a homemade long simmered ragu is so decadent, but at the same time, the mushroom really feels lighter, earthier.
Yeah, and I think that's part of what this holiday is there's a lot of these kind of opposites, right? Like you're either totally out or you're home, or you want something quick and easy, or you want a spread of bites, or you want something like what you're suggesting is this long simmered sauce and then homemade noodles. But sometimes you do really want to spend, especially if the weather is cold outside or you've had a particularly busy holiday season, you just want to be at home in your pajamas with your slippers cooking all day. I mean, this sounds really delicious. And I do love a noodle at the New Year.
And cooking all day and then like having something special without having to leave your house, which is always nice too. Yeah. There's another noodle dish I'm thinking about, and I could see myself making one New Year's Eve and one New Year's Day, like maximizing your double noodling it. There's a gochujang mushroom udon, again, mushrooms being involved instead of meat, by Hetty Louise McKinnon. This is from her website. And it's as simple as ever. It's udon noodles, which you can buy in those kind of vacuum sealed packs, like fresh udon, which you can find in any Asian grocery store, but you could also use dried if you didn't have fresh. And then a bunch of just basic cremini or shiitake mushrooms, whichever you prefer, scallions, butter. That's the main part of the dish. And then it's gochujang, which is fermented red pepper paste, soy sauce, and mirin. And that's it. I love this kind of fat, chewy noodle with mushrooms and scallions, that kind of earthy and brightness, and then that spicy, buttery, glossy sauce all around it. And it comes together super quick, but still feels like not something you're going to eat every single day necessarily.
Well, and I love that you've actually brought two mushroom recipes, these two mushroom noodle recipes. And I think there's something very grounding about mushrooms, that earthiness.
Yeah.
And, maybe that's also calling forth
Yes.
in the new year this groundedness and this longevity.
I love that you're connecting mushrooms to groundedness because I think it is true. Again, after a season of running around and
Yes.
socializing, that's why at New Year's Eve, sometimes I do like to stay in and just be like, oh, can I just have a calm moment amidst it all?
Well, Sonia, I'm thinking about a menu that you can make ahead. There's this recipe for black-eyed pea and pork gumbo, which I think is really not traditional. They say as much when they're talking about the recipe, but it's by Donald Link, who is a revered chef in New Orleans. He is the chef owner of Koshan and Butcher, two restaurants that I really loved and ate at many times when I lived there. And, what I love about this recipe is that it has a lot of the usual suspects that you expect in a gumbo. It has a really dark roux, it has the trinity, the celery, the onion, the green peppers, but it also has okra and black-eyed peas that you cook off, braised collards. They call for homemade or store-bought smoked pork butt or shoulder, either one of those cuts. I will say I don't have either of those things, but I would just use a pork shoulder or pork butt and cut it up into pieces. And so you get the pork, which is traditional for the new year. A lot of different cultures eat pork on New Year's because pigs root forward. You've got the greens, you've got the black-eyed peas, and I'm a fan of okra. And so I love that you have all these different elements. It's a one-pot dish, basically.
I actually didn't know about the pork. I obviously heard about black eyed peas. My mom is always like, are you eating black eyed peas? You have to eat them on January 1st. And I love the idea of making this big gumbo that then you could eat the next day and the next day. You're sort of really stretching out all of these symbolic, festive things. Pork, to your point, the greens, the peas, and then all that flavor. And you're the one who taught me that you can get roux pre-made. So that can kind of make this an easier process.
Yeah, my friend Roxanne makes a really dark, rich roux that I keep in my fridge. And I have a jar in my fridge and I have a jar in my pantry. And it really starts the dish off on the right foot. And you don't have to watch the roux pot for 30 minutes.
For an
And
hour
so, or
sometimes to get
yeah,
a
I
really
mean,
dark roux. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. It's traditional to serve gumbo with rice, and rice is also a symbol of prosperity. And so, for a menu like this, I would think about starting with maybe some mini cornbread muffins. Corn, the gold of corn is also symbolic too. So, it's like little mini jalapeno cheddar cornbread muffins, a bowl of gumbo, some rice. It's also traditional to serve potato salad with gumbo, which is something I didn't learn until I visited Louisiana. And I would use your potato salad recipe, the herby one with all the green, because bringing also green to a table is symbolic of money.
I have to interject because I'm so glad you reminded me about potato salad because my one true New Year's tradition is to make potato salad. We've talked
Oh my
about it
God.
before, but I like kind of
Right.
forgot till this moment. But in Soviet culture, my family's
With the
from Ukraine,
peas,
with the
with
peas.
the the canned peas.
Well, there's a traditional salad that almost any person who comes from a former Soviet country makes for New Year's, and it's called salad olivier. Our house, we called it salat de boeuf. It's a potato salad, like with a mayonnaise-based dressing, but you add peas, have to add peas, cooked carrots, cooked hard-boiled eggs, pickles, and it sounds not good to everyone, but I swear people when they try it, they love it, and it really is eaten for luck.
Yeah, because it has all those elements. Eggs are traditional for New Year's. They're also
Yes.
round. The
Peas.
peas are green like money, and also they're round like coins. And I was a little bit surprised the first time that was served a bowl of gumbo and a side of potato salad. I'm not going to lie. I was a little bit like, what is happening right What I love about it is that you have this long cooked stew with a little bit of rice, and then you have this cold salad that has all this freshness in it. And it really works in an unexpected way, I think. For someone who didn't grow up eating that, I love this kind of menu.
Love it. And I love little mini cornbread muffins. That sounds so good, especially with a little bit of jalapeno. It's a perfect either New Year's or New Year's Day menu. And you can make a lot of this, to your point, well in advance. We also have to talk about sweets because no holiday is sort of complete without a little sweet treat. I've been thinking a lot about things in this sort of pudding and mousse category. That to me screams New Year's for some reason. I've talked once before about Carolina Gallen's no bake chocolate mousse pie. It's really what I'm eyeing for this holiday. It's so easy to make. And to me, it's like all the benefits of a mousse pie with half the work. And you don't have to use raw eggs, which is sometimes something I don't want to do when I'm making a chocolate mousse. It's a Oreo crust. And then the filling has heavy cream, but it also has sour cream. And you are drizzling
Oh,
in melted chocolate and you think it's going to break, but it doesn't. Like her method just really works. So it's really just combining some
I'm so
simple.
curious. I need to make this recipe.
It's so delicious and so simple. Yeah, you're just whipping together sour cream, heavy cream, and drizzling in melted chocolate. That's really the base of the mousse. And then you let it go into the fridge to set. So it definitely tastes better the next day or even 2 days later. It tastes great. And then at the end for presentation, you add more whipped cream and you do chocolate shavings. And it really looks like a beautiful mousse pie or a chocolate silk pie.
Yeah.
But Carolina Gillen also had another kind of pudding-ish, mousse-ish recipe that really called to me, and it's her cranberry pudding. This cranberry pudding is almost like a banana pudding because you're using Nilla wafers, but instead of bananas, the flavor is cranberries. And of course, you have to boil and cook your cranberries like you would a simple sauce. It doesn't take more than 10 or 15 minutes. And it's almost like you're making a version of a cranberry curd slash cranberry pudding, and then you layer it with whipped cream and with Nilla wafers. And it's not that hard to make. It is making a pudding from scratch, but I don't think that's terribly hard. You're not baking anything. Then you're assembling it. And it's another thing that benefits from being made ahead and from sitting in the fridge. I think the idea of that tart cranberry with that sweet cream sounds really good to me.
I really love cranberries. I've learned to love them so much more as an adult. And I think that brightness and that color, especially when it's also the season of the winter solstice, the shortest day, the longest night. And so we're trying to bring in light and color. This is such a great idea, too. I love this.
Also, cranberries are only here really for like 6 weeks, Thanksgiving to New Year's, and
Yeah.
then they're gone. So I also feel like celebrating them while they're around because they are such a wonderful flavor.
Well, I also think of them, you and I both share a love of cherries, and I
Yeah.
really think of them as the cherries of the winter. I love the cranberries are like the
It's
cherries of the
true.
winter, and
You're right.
it really is this only this little time of year that you can get them, which is also fleeting like cherry season.
That's true.
Well, Sonia, it's like we're friends. It's like we've known each other forever because the dessert that I'm bringing to the table is also a mixture of chocolate and pudding, and it also has a chocolate cake. There's this recipe for an old school chocolate trifle, which I know that the British cooks have their own version of what trifles are. I definitely grew up with a lot of desserts that have this idea in mind, which is you make a chocolate cake. The recipe asks you to make a chocolate cake from a box mix. You make chocolate pudding. It also recommends that you make it from a box mix. You break up some Oreos, you layer it with whipped cream, you put it in the fridge, you let it sit for a while till it all melts together. To your point, I do think making a homemade pudding is actually very easy. I've been doing it a lot lately, and making that homemade pudding actually just takes maybe 10 minutes, and the results are so much better. So I love to make my own chocolate pudding. If you like making cake, you want to spend time in the kitchen, make your chocolate cake. If not, just use a box mix, layer these all together. And it's this decadent dessert for the end of the year. You're really celebrating the end of this holiday season. This kind of to me feels like that last bit of fireworks.
Last hurrah. And I
Yeah.
think you could even buy a store-bought chocolate cake or chocolate pound cake. Like you would
Yes.
almost like when I'm making a trifle, sometimes I'll buy a pound cake pre-made to
Oh,
layer
that's
it
a good
in.
idea.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so
There's good
easy.
chocolate pound cakes that you could
There's great
buy.
chocolate pound cakes. And so I love that these are versatile. Like you can make it as scratch made as you want, or you can make it with a little help from the store. And the idea of pudding and whipped cream and Oreos and chocolate cake, we're definitely along the same wavelength. There is something that just feels like, okay, we're going to really make the most out of our last dessert of the holiday season. But then we have
Yes.
to get into the first day of the year where your brain sort of automatically switches into a different direction.
So what are you thinking for January 1st? What are you thinking for New Year's Day?
Definitely think about legumes on the first of the year. Black eyed peas are not my personal favorite beans, so I'm often thinking of other symbolic but festive legumes. Lentils are considered a really auspicious legume to start your year with.
Yeah, it's shaped like a coin.
It's also shaped like a coin. It's also
Yes.
round. But I think the idea of a really beautiful soup or stew that you could sort of make a big pot of on the first, eat that day, but then also have ease you into the week. It could be a couple meals, right? And there's this lentil and chicken soup with sweet potatoes and escarole that I've made a version of before. I always kind of riff on it, but the idea of a chicken base that you add some lentils to, that you add some sweet potato to, or you could do squash.
Bringing some sweetness into your new
Yes.
year.
And color and that richness
Yeah.
and the minerality, which is so
Yeah.
nourishing from a sweet potato. And then escarole, sometimes I've done things like spinach or collard greens or chard. I don't think you have to use exactly every ingredient as listed, but you could. And that escarole would add a nice bitter contrast to the sweet potatoes and savoriness of the chicken broth. This is the kind of dish I'm going to be making to start the year.
I love having greens on New Year's Day. That's one of my, so I love that this recipe kind of has a lot of different elements that are going to bring you into the new year in a healthful way. What I'm also thinking about is making coconut braised collards. I love collard greens. It's a very symbolic dish to make on New Year's Day, but I don't always love just collard greens with ham. I've said it. I've said it on our podcast. I don't love them with
Well,
ham.
I never have them with ham because
I don't,
I don't eat
yeah.
ham. So
I
I'm
don't
with you.
them. No, I'll eat them, but I love the idea of a coconut braised collard because there's that richness and creaminess, but there's also something light about using coconut instead of ham. And if I make that gumbo the night before, I know I'm going to have a little rice left over. And so greens and rice, that's like a gentle dish the next day on New Year's Day.
What is the recipe from that this collard green that you're making?
There's one from Von Diaz on New York Times Cooking.
That's so interesting because I remember there is this Gregory Gourdet coconut braised collard greens. That's also a recipe I really loved. I wondered if we like the same recipe, and I feel like it's the same idea though. So what you're talking about really speaks to me. I think the collard greens, those rich, dark greens, work so well in a coconut broth and a coconut milk and simmered and softened. And you don't have to have that meat element. And keeping it vegetarian and keeping it in a different flavor profile feels really nice too on the first of the year.
Yeah, and there's a couple of really smart and also simple pantry ideas in this, which is there's a little bit of butter in it. She asks you to use coconut oil, which always amplifies that coconut flavor. You also add a bunch of scallions to it and a little bit of soy sauce. And so
Oh,
there's like a brightness with the scallions in addition to the collards.
yeah, that sounds perfect. I'm also thinking about maybe making actually two soups that day. I know it sounds funny, but sometimes I like to start the week off by having things already in my fridge, especially I feel like the first week of the year can feel a little busy. Like everyone's come back from the holidays and you're answering emails. And sometimes I'm not so in the mood to cook. So if I can get ahead of it, I like to make something like two soups or a soup and a stew or something I can stick in the fridge or the freezer. What I'm definitely eyeing is also on the greens front. I think we're just all craving greens after
Yes.
everything.
And
And
they're everywhere. This is the time to eat
this is
greens.
the
It's
time
like the
for
winter. Yeah, they're so sweet and delicious.
And you really introduced me to Anna Thomas, who wrote that beautiful cookbook all about soups.
Yeah, her book is called Love Soup. It's really one of my favorite cookbooks that I own.
Yeah, and I didn't even know about it till I met you. And then you always shared your love of that book. There's one of her recipes is available through Food 52, and it's for this delicious greens soup. So it uses a whole bunch of chard or a bag of spinach, a bunch of kale, 4 to 5 green onions, cilantro. So it's like based in all this herb and green goodness. And then you're also adding Yukon Gold potatoes for a little heft instead of creams because you're going to puree this soup. Onion, of course, for that aroma. Then she also suggests a splash of marsala or dry sherry. And I love a kind of boozy or vinegary element in a soup, something that lifts it up. It's made 100% with vegetable broth, which you could buy store-bought if you didn't want to make it from scratch. And then a little pinch of cayenne too. I think those touches, like the splash of sherry, the pinch of cayenne, she also says like a splash of lemon juice. They're very subtle touches that are going to make this more than just a pureed, bland green soup.
I'm glad you said that because I think she's such a great recipe writer, and adding that potato into a soup that has all these really healthy elements gives it a little bit of richness. And what's great about her book, I'll just shout this out because I know I talk about it a lot, but she has a whole chapter of green soup. So I'm glad that this one she's released, but she has several green soup recipes. One of her green soup recipes has arborio rice in it, which is the rice that you use in risotto, and you boil it in your broth, and then you add your greens to the soup, and then you puree it all together. And so it's this vibrant green soup that is creamy, just like your soup that you're talking about that has the potato in it.
Yeah, either rice or potato to add a little heft is nice in a soup that's made of leafy greens.
Sonia, I'm also thinking about a vegetarian dish on New Year's Day that has dark greens and a little bit of protein in it. There's this Hetty Louise McKinnon recipe that I made before. It's called chickpea, spinach, and feta pie, and that really doesn't describe at all how good this dish is, this recipe is. It reminds me a little bit of your ruffle milk pie where you take phyllo. It has these crunchy bits and soft bits, and what's amazing about this recipe is it starts with a ton of leeks, an entire pound of leeks, and you cook them down until they're sweet and delicious. You add garlic, there's baby spinach, a can of chickpeas, feta, lemon, dill, and phyllo. You put it all together, and I have made it in a cast iron skillet like she calls for, but I've also popped these into muffin tins and eaten them individually, almost like this little vegetarian bite with a salad. It's so much easier than you think, and it really has those almost like spanakopita vibes without all that work.
And without all that cheese, it sounds like.
Yes. Yeah, there's a little bit of cheese, but not a lot.
I really love Hetty Louise McKinnon's recipes that involve phyllo dough. There was that other one, that spinach phyllo ruffle milk pie that I made of hers that is like where you blend spinach and eggs sort of together and then you pour it over phyllo. It's in this family, and I think it is a perfect way to start the year with something satisfying that has that texture of the phyllo but has all that green and the chickpeas and the healthiness of that. It sounds delicious.
It's doing the same thing that you're talking about by making two soups on New Year's. This is a dish that I have made and reheated over the next couple of days. I would even make the collards and the rice and make this and eat it over the course of the week because I think you do want to ease into the new year and you're kind of recovering from the fullness of the holiday season, and we're starting a new year, and I love that it helps to be prepared as a home cook for sure.
Yeah, anything that can make every week a little bit easier and a little more delicious.
Absolutely.
Well, until next time.
Until next time.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for being our food friend.
If you enjoyed our podcast, please subscribe, leave us a review, and share this episode with friends. We love hearing from you, so follow us on Instagram or drop us a line at foodfriendspodcast.com.
Yes, we'd love to hear from you and your food friends. Happy cooking and eating.